Webcam microphone up close.
Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, days and the final slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestler, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter whether the cartoon comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to just raise two together. Whenever I try to prove out, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to be sadly disappointed on another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty, dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2. Within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America, we bring you the Ochelli Effect.
It's like, damn sure, no, I'm an original. We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for...
That's that.
For the 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And right about at the end of my intro there, we get to hear all that wonderful noise on UCY.TV radio. We are live. It is the Ochelli Effect. I am Chuck Ochelli, and I'm back on. Just joining me right as I was coming into broadcast time is Lucille Fernin from the Liberty Beacon. Hi, Lucille.
Hi, Chuck. How are you?
All right. I didn't expect you to join me first. I thought Roger was coming in first, but this will work out just fine.
He didn't do the first hour?
No, this is the first hour.
Oh, it is the first hour.
Yeah.
Okay, well, why don't we have Roger come on then?
Oh, sure. I know he had a little agenda he wanted to get to. I think you might have a little one too tonight, so we'll do it whenever you're ready, okay?
Okay, so you'll call me back then, right?
You got it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Anyway, let's see if we can bring in Roger real quick. I'm telling you, right as the intro was going, that's when I got the call, and I was a little confused. So, well, live radio, that's the way it goes, right? Let's see what we can do here. Bring on Mr. Landry. Where are you? All right. The Skype gave me a bit of trouble today. I don't know why. It decided that it needed to upgrade itself and everything else, and I didn't ask for an upgrade, but I got one anyway, and here we are. Anyway, I had to shut down the whole system and everything before I went on, and I actually thought I might not be able to do this at all tonight. But got it together. Tried to read a little article. Roger, you with me?
Yes, I am.
Oh, excellent. Okay, little confusion there, because Lucille was going to come on.
She had told me I would be with you the first hour and she would be with you the second hour.
Oh, yeah. She called me in when I was in the middle of my intro, actually, though, and I thought maybe something had gone wrong and you needed to switch places. But turns out it was just a little confusion. I was trying to get to that article you dropped me just before airtime. By the way, everybody, this is Roger Landry again, because it is Tuesday and Liberty Beacon time, that's for sure. We're putting off the Earthship Solution thing, like I said, just a little bit because it needs a little more time to simmer before we get to any real developments there. Of course, the website is up, as we've discussed before and all that. But this is Roger Landry again, the founder and actually the co-founder, right, of the Liberty Beacon?
No, I am the founder of the Liberty Beacon Project.
Oh, you're the founder, excuse me. But
Not a problem.
Another gentleman that works with you quite directly, though. I remember that, but yes. I guess he didn't found it. You did.
He was brought in because he offered so much to the project, and we deal heavily with websites on a global fashion. and he is an IT individual, and this was my Achilles heel. So he has been with me almost from the start, and has done a lot to facilitate the construction of websites on a global fashion.
Right, and you tell me a lot of times about the websites that are springing up all the time. I don't know if you want to mention how many countries they're in, or if you want to direct anybody to any of the foreign sites or whatever, because we are available worldwide on UCY also, but of course mostly to the English-speaking world. So, but I know you have sites in Germany now, and
not yet, and that would be the Netherlands that we're discussing putting a site up. But right now, it's all English-speaking countries.
That's the Netherlands. I'm sorry. That's right. That's right.
Right now, the active sites are in Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and South Africa. And we are talking to a couple of countries in South America and a couple of countries in Europe at this point about putting up sites in their area as well. Plus, of course, the 3 American sites, which are the Liberty Beacon, the Falling Darkness, and Earthship Solutions.
Right, and like I said, I really like the attitude, particularly on the Falling Darkness. So, but that's just me.
I like it too. As a matter of fact, what happened was when the Liberty Beacon started to really grow in prominence and people started paying attention to it, we had people who fought along the edge of specific topics and said, well, why aren't you discussing this, or why aren't you discussing this? Because, and again, I will state, the Liberty Beacon is the original site for the project, and it is the center of the Liberty Beacon project. So we felt in order to discuss the edge of these topics, we should separate these issues out onto another site, which could present the edge. So the Falling Darkness is in fact the edge of the Liberty Beacon project and has some really phenomenal information on it. But it's not the kind of stuff you want to read as a bedtime story.
No, it's definitely the kind of thing that, if you care about the world around you or you care about people at all, it'll definitely make you angry. So, but still, this is the kind of stuff I'm usually after, to be honest with you, Roger. So,
oh, absolutely.
Because you know what, without passion, I just don't feel quite alive. And, sometimes I gotta tell you, anger is one of those things that does get at me, and it's not anger based out of fear, so much as it is that I really wish that all of us could survive a whole lot better than we are. And I do mean that about everybody, and not just, those of us that are aware and awake. I would prefer that everybody who shares the species with me here had a better life, to be honest with you. So, well, this is what makes me angry,
I would tell you that we constantly bellow out about the vast amount of sheeple or asleep people in this country, and actually globally, but we're discussing it right now, so let's carry that out a little further. When we discuss how many guns are in private hands in this country, the government has one figure, and reality is a totally different picture. Since Obama took office, over 70 million additional guns have been purchased in this country. Now stop and think about that number. And then stop and think about the government, who states that probably an estimated 100 million guns are in private hands in this country. I would beg to tell you it's between 250 and 300 million guns in private hands in this country. So there are a lot of what I call sleepers out there, but I'm not talking about sheeple. These are people who are awake and aware, but do their damnedest to keep as low a profile as possible. But I would also say, in the same breath, that if something was to happen, that the people in this country were forced into a physical uprising, you would suddenly find that there are a lot more people standing next to you than what you expected.
I sure hope that you are dead on right, because it does feel quite a bit like, this is very quickly getting getting darker and darker, it seems, on the horizon. So
the falling darkness?
The
yes,
falling
sir.
darkness, yes, sir. So meanwhile, look, I was trying to get at that article that you dropped me just before we went to air, and I really wanted to read it, but as I said, my Skype and everything else wasn't cooperating with me right before I went on. So I didn't get to it, but I would love to hear about it, whatever it is, Roger, because I've got to say that you're always a guy that outside of one small issue we had. But by the way, did you ever take a look at that JFK issue that I threw back at you last week?
I started to do a little bit more research into it, and I never disagreed with anything you said to start with. Obviously, again, I constantly tell people I'm an expert at nothing. I'm a general practitioner. I know enough to have an intelligent conversation. But there are a lot of people out there, and you prove that, again, who on a specific topic have far more knowledge than I do. And I had no problems going along with what you said, and I had no problems agreeing with you. So you might have considered it an issue. I didn't. As a matter of fact, I went away from that conversation knowing a little bit more than I walked in with.
Oh, that's what I try to do all the time, but as you say, yeah. But as you say, I'm one of these guys. I mean, I've got a couple of areas where I've spent a little more time than the average person has, is what the thing is. And the JFK assassination and trying to put that into context. And to be honest with you, a lot of legend is sort of built out of it too. And sometimes this disturbs me more than anything, is that when people cling to things that are easily disproven, it
You
does.
mean like 9/11?
Oh yeah, like that. When people cling to, the 19 guys with the box cutters who took over airplanes after tying, if you watch the movie Flight 93, they tied what, red ties around their heads or something in order to identify themselves. I was looking at that movie recently, and this is why I bring it up. It was sort of like, first of all, I have never found anyone who's ever been able to explain to me that debris field, okay, in Pennsylvania. Where is the airplane, first of all?
Yep.
It looks to me...
Supposedly, it's fully underground, which is absolute insanity unless the damn thing hits quicksand. Even if a plane hits water, it shatters into a million pieces.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
pieces. Where's the luggage? Where's the rest of the fuselage? Where are these, what is it, 2-ton Rolls-Royce engines? 2 of them at least?
Yep.
Where are they?
They would have broken off long before submerging underneath hard-packed soil.
And there's a hell of a lot of aircraft aluminum here, okay, plus the frame, come on. Something is very, very wrong here. Now, look, I don't proclaim to understand exactly what happened here. It was my impression that day, trying to keep track of various live feeds in the electronic media and the broadcast media, I should say, because there really wasn't all that much internet happening for me anyway at that time. I was somewhat involved in the internet, but it wasn't like a key thing like it is now. You didn't have mobile phones that did all this stuff. You didn't have various mobile, what I call your fondle slab of choice, because, it could be anything now. The Apple, the iPad, the various sorts of iPods, the,
tablets. Yep.
Tablets of all sorts. I mean, Android devices of many makes and models. But the thing is that at that time, you had to pretty much sit down at a computer, and not too many people could even remotely afford a laptop that I knew anyway. So it was not your main source. Almost everyone turned on the TV. And I do say that, and because of some other stuff I was going through archives-wise, I just want to remind you of how profound the statement was once by an odd sort of musician/poet, where he said that the revolution will not be televised. The more I think about that, the more profound and extremely, I don't know how to put it, prophetic, I guess I should say, that statement really is. The revolution really will not be televised, folks. I don't know if it'll make it out on the internet either, because I think they'll try and cut us all off if something like that really goes down, but the revolution will most certainly not be televised. But back to 9/11, I remember from that day distinctly getting the impression that that plane may have been shot down, destroyed in midair. But regardless of if that was true or if there was ever a plane or anything else, or if they had misunderstood the air traffic control signals because of the, the ghost inputs from the drills and everything else. I mean, there was a lot of confusion here. And I think that the one thing that we can all agree upon is that we were never fully told the truth. And that is something that I have definitely keyed on and maintained throughout here, is that the official story, remember, is simply a story. And, the more you investigate it, the more you find out that their conspiracy theory is usually the wildest one of all. But anyway, so, like I said, I had a little trouble getting on, so I was curious about what that article was about, and I'll shut up now and just take a listen to you, sir.
Oh, you never have to shut up. And for anybody who's interested, I just published another article on 9/11 2 days ago on the Liberty Beacon, which is quite extensive, and it gives out a lot of information, comparative information. So if you're interested, go to thelibertybeacon.com, and you'll find that article. Okay.
There's links to that on Facebook too. I saw the photograph of some video or something. It was a still from one of the videos, and I remember seeing the Liberty Beacon stamp on it. I believe I reposted it on my page as well. So you can follow the links from there if you can't find it elsewhere.
Well, what I picked, or what I hoped to discuss this evening, was something that has been pushed back into the back of the brain of so many people. And when you consider someone like myself, who was 3 generations old, okay, I'm one of your quintessential baby boomers. I was born in 1954. And I grew up in a period where we were all terrified of a nuclear war. The article that I sent you, the title is Nuclear War, the option is still on the table. And most people won't even consider this today. We have a generation that's been brought up post-Cold War who don't even consider that nuclear war is an option. They figure it's a dinosaur issue. They figure it's gone. They figure nobody is insane enough to want to perpetrate a nuclear war. Well, let me get into that just a little bit, okay? Let me go through the preface of this article. It has been many years since the so-called Cold War ended. This was a time in global history when the world's population hung on the precipice of nuclear annihilation, with 2 great nuclear superpowers, both wielding enough megatons to destroy all life on this planet many times over. With the collapse of the old USSR, the possibilities or probabilities faded quickly from our consciousness. Now, once again, there are those within the U.S. power structure, and I'm speaking of those who pull the strings, the puppet masters, who feel a limited nuclear first strike is not only possible, but viable. And references to why I state that are all given in the article. Yet we look at the damage to this planet and its biosphere being facilitated by one mechanism of disaster, Fukushima. And we see major health implications and massive aquatic die-offs underway. Now imagine the fallout from a limited nuclear strike, even a limited nuclear strike, okay, of the magnitude required to incapacitate a nation such as Russia or China. That being enough warheads to decapitate the retaliatory capability of either or both of these nations. That would require strikes across both nations of many warheads. Say goodbye to humanity, and I'll qualify that. The sheer arrogance of these individuals amazes and astounds my rational brain, or the rational brain of any person. The massive volume of peer-reviewed research available on this topic is mind-boggling. This is the result of sitting on the precipice of destruction for several generations, facilitated a mountain of information on the subject, and none of it was promising for humanity. Thus the phrase mutually assured destruction, or MAD, was coined, and it became common knowledge that humanity as we know it could not survive even a so-called limited preemptive strike. Whether it is preemptive to to negate a potential enemy's capability to strike first, to prevent a sneak attack, or subversive, to rob a nation or nations of their economic or regional influence, or to assert or reassert political, economic, or military control, it is all of humanity that will surely suffer fatally from this insanity. The mere thought that this is once again being considered a viable option in any scenario screams volumes as to the convoluted mindset of those who pull the strings of power in the Western world today. The bottom line must be that we are no longer discussing whether or not we will leave a better world for our children. We are now discussing, will we leave any world for our children? Excuse me. In this description, or in this struggle to maintain economic control in the face of the global collapse of the dollar, is that what this is about? Is this unbridled arrogance by these elite who foresee the shift in power from the West to the East, facilitating ruination of their global economic empires?
Roger,
yes.
I just want to interrupt you for 1 second here and just interject something. I don't think that people fully understand or appreciate the concept of what was the mutually assured destructive deterrent. Okay, this was something that I had the chance at just before, not long before he passed away, actually, to talk to Robert McNamara. Okay, and I didn't get much in with the guy. I don't think it was a very valuable sort of interview, but I'll tell you one impression that did stand with me quite a bit after he had given a lecture up in New York about this particular subject, okay? Because these were the guys who were sort of the architects for the modern understanding of the mutually assured destructive deterrent, okay? There was 2 Ds on that man to begin with.
Yes. I know, I lived through it. As a matter of fact, I'm ex-Navy nuclear submarine fleet, and we carried 16 missiles, long-range missiles, each one with more warheads, or, basically you had a bunch of warheads, and these warheads were, MIRV stands for multiple independent reentry vehicles. So those 16 missiles could take out a lot of targets, and this is what I did for a living.
Oh, yes. So you have an appreciation because of your hands-on experience of what this actually means. But I've got to tell you something that, this man closer to the time that he would pass away was extremely regretful about developing this type of strategy, about promoting this type of strategy during his time as the Secretary of Defense.
Well, let me get through this preface, and then we'll start to talk. No problem, because what you just interjected is valuable information. It's absolutely true, and I appreciate it. But then we're going to start to talk about just how dangerous. Okay? Right now we're talking about a mindset. Okay?
Right.
Okay, so again, let me start at this paragraph again. Is this desperation to maintain economic control in the face of the global collapse of the dollar? Is this unbridled arrogance by these elite who foresee the shift in power from the West to the East, facilitating the ruination of their global economic empires? Or will this be a concerted effort to, as many of us discuss, reduce the global population? In any case, the end result is the demise of humanity itself. Even if these elite manage to survive the impending Holocaust, they would unleash, locked away in their underground bunkers, with the future and the failure of nuclear power plants across the planet inevitable once the power grid goes down. This planet would be poisonous and fatal to any remaining humanity for countless of generations or centuries into the future. We are already painfully aware of the blight on this planet being caused by such destructive mechanisms as failing nuclear power facilities, such as 3 Mile Island, such as Chernobyl, such as Fukushima. But let's add to that geoengineering, which has the ability to terminate life on this planet second only to a full-out nuclear war. That's, of course, weather modification. And genetically modified organisms, which many scientists are screaming are tearing the biosphere down. And if the biosphere goes, there goes humanity. While the first two may take decades or generations to facilitate the downfall of a vast majority of humanity, they're slow kill mechanisms. The nuclear option would accomplish this in mere years, with a very large portion of the global population being eliminated in very short order, and the remaining dying off of starvation or radiation poisoning in a few short years following this fiasco. So we have the quick kill and we have the slow kill. The slow kill is the failing nuclear reactors across the planet, the atmospheric spring, and the GMOs. The quick kill being even a limited nuclear strike. Now, this is the preface I wrote for this article, and basically it's an article in itself. But what we need to do is get into an article I attached to this, and I won't read through that. We'll discuss that, because I'm sure you'll want to interject some of your points into this conversation at this point. The article I attached to it is called The Lethality of Nuclear Weapons. Let me give you a quick for instance, and then I'd like your opinion on this. It has been stated by scientific peer-reviewed studies that if even 1%, I'm talking 1%, of either the U.S. nuclear arsenal or the Russian nuclear arsenal was unleashed in hostility on this planet, it would facilitate a permanent change in the structure of the weather patterns on this planet and be responsible for a very short order death of at least, at a minimum, 2 billion people across this planet. That's 1%. Now, we have, right now, people within the power structure in this country who are seeing the rise in power and scope of the Soviet Union, of Russia, no longer the Soviet Union, and the groupings they're forming with powers such as India and China, which are also nuclear states. And what they're seeing here is that this will hasten the collapse of the dollar. This will hasten the collapse of the influence of Western society. This will hasten the collapse of the military influence of Western society. So one of the things that is still on the table and has been discussed and is discussed in this attached article is the U.S. considering what might be called a surgical strike or a preemptive strike, or what they call nuclear primacy, whereby they go in and strategically take out the nuclear weapons or the nuclear capability of both China and Russia. I know for a fact, having lived through this for 30 years, working for the DoD, that these missiles and control stations are stationed all across the Soviet Union, which is a huge country, and all across China, which is a huge country. And in order to decapitate them and their capability, you would be talking hundreds of strikes. That is well over the 1% that these scientists are stating would facilitate a ruination of and a mass starvation on this planet due to a major shift, a permanent shift in the global weather patterns. That's more along the lines of 15 to 20%, and that's just what they call nuclear primacy or a preemptive strike. What you would have with 15 to 20% of the utilization of just the United States nuclear capability is a total disaster that would eventually wipe out all high-order forms of life on this planet, meaning mammals, anything that walks or barks or slithers or talks is going to go away, either immediately through the destruction of the weapons, or almost immediately afterwards due to the massive amount of radiation, or soon to follow by starvation on a massive level we can't even comprehend. So this is what we're looking at. And we're looking at an elite who has a place to go. What they don't seem to understand, and this is the big kicker, is that once you kill the power grid in the Soviet Union, which just the EMP, never mind the explosions from these weapons, would knock the entire Soviet power grid out, the entire Chinese power grid out. If anything they had got through to us would knock out the entire U.S. power grid. What you would see is every single nuclear power reactor on this planet go into meltdown in less than 30 days, some of them in less than 2 weeks, which would facilitate a criticality which would release immense amounts of radiation into the atmosphere, poisoning this planet for tens of thousands of years. There's no winners in this, Chuck. Where is this insanity coming from?
You know, I gotta say this here. This was exactly the point that started to get me onto government watch lists. Okay? This was exactly the thing that happened when I was, I believe I was 12 years old. Okay? And I sent a letter to President Reagan about exactly this topic. Because at that time, you know, even in the major media, there were still the discussions about these types of things. The possibilities. What if an accident happened? There was Star Wars was going on, but there was also, you know, as far as the more, fictional media, you know, you had a movie like War Games, where, a kid hacks into, the Pentagon and accidentally just about starts a nuclear war. Things like this. But this concept was followed on a little bit after that by a movie called The Day After, and I'm not sure what year it was, but I'm sure if somebody does a search on it, they can find it somewhere online, at least referenced. And it caused a national discussion to take place and a resurgence in anti-nuclear sentiment. But what I think,
remember Red Dawn?
I sure do. The first time that was released, that caused another shockwave sort of in the social conscience. You know, it wasn't adjusted so that we were dealing with, you know, fictitious, amorphous sort of enemies or anything like that. It was the enemies that we were taught as children were the enemies of our country. It was the Russians who were invading us, and they took us over, you know, through a regular sort of conventional warfare means, as opposed to a nuclear means. But back to the nuclear story, you know, this was in the consciousness. This kind of stuff, and the reason why it was being approached at that time, to be honest with you, is because it was known that this was part of the we're dealing with, the discussion sort of in the national consciousness about this sort of thing, about the dangers that this would entail. And my question to President Reagan, which I wrote to him directly and got a form letter back, and then was informed sometime later that an FBI file was opened because of it, was, you know, the purpose of these weapons, sir, it seems, is only to destroy everyone. There is no strategic win here. There is no strategic good to be had by the production and use and proliferation of these arsenals. This was the kind of thing that I wrote to him then. And, you know, I have not changed my mind on this particular fact. I don't see, personally, how it is that, I mean, really, if you think about it, you know, how anyone can possibly benefit, once you, and again, you know, look, I don't have the experience.
There is someone who does benefit, okay? And this is the military-industrial complex, who benefits a huge amount through the spending on nuclear weapons. Not only that, but we had a president, when he stepped into office the first time, one of his platforms he ran on was, we need to stop the madness, we need to stop the wars. Did you know that he has lauded over a very large increase in spending on nuclear weapons in this country?
Which, I think you cut just out a little bit there. Which president are we talking about here?
Obama.
See, I knew the answer to that question, but I wanted to hear you say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, as frightening or as elevated as our cause sort of became when it came to the military-industrial complex during the so-called Reagan administration, the Reagan-Bush years, let's just call them, during that time, we had a serious, increase, like an arch that went up in our spending on this type of stuff. And that is true. And it did create, vast fortunes for individuals who were engaged in that business. That is true. But at the end of the day, and I was going beyond that, not thinking in terms of money, not thinking in terms of, prestige or people's abilities to wield power or anything like that. No. I was thinking about just the survival of, the species.
I knew that. And the only reason I interjected that is because basically these are the people who pull the strings. These are the people who, GMOs, we absolutely know for a fact that they are a blight on humanity. But at the same time, we can't even get labeling in most states or most counties or most anywhere in this country, simply because the factions who own the biotech companies are too powerful and their lobbies are too powerful, and they in fact select the people who rule this country. Again, anybody who feels that most of our elected leaders are elected has to wake up. And the higher up you go in the hierarchy of elected officials, the less those elections actually count. But we're talking about lethality, all right? And I understood the point you were trying to get across. It benefits no one. Not even the people who escape to these underground bunkers that are connected by shuttle runs that go cross-continent. Even these people, you're going to live in caves or holes underground for the next 10,000 years. Because what's going to leak out of these failed reactors globally, what's going to leak into the atmosphere from these nuclear detonations. Another thing most people don't even consider is that nuclear detonations destroy the ozone layer. Now, what you're going to have, even if we utilize 1% of either our arsenal or the Soviet arsenal, or even the Chinese arsenal, what we're going to have is a total destruction of the ozone layer. When you destroy the ozone layer, you destroy the habitability of this planet. It is the ozone layer that allows human beings and mammals and reptiles and fish to live on this planet. So even a limited nuclear war is going to do such massive damage to the ozone layer that the protection from the UVB and the UVC, these ultraviolet rays are going to stream right through, and they are deadly to life.
So, not to mention the damage to the magnetosphere, because there is no way that you can have these types of radical, disruptions, magnetic pulses, the electromagnetic pulse, all of those things happen. I mean, when they talk about a nuclear detonation, it's going to disturb anything that requires, conductive energy. So that includes our magnetosphere as well. There is no way for us to protect ourselves without the ozone and this. Both things are in a delicate balance to begin with, and, we've already kind of screwed with them enough, I think.
We've screwed with them more than enough, and I'm sure you've done a little delving into the issues of atmospheric spraying, but we are in the process of destroying the ozone layer on a daily basis just due to the chemicals we put into the upper atmosphere.
Right. I mean, so when you take into account that this delicate system is already in a sort of extra delicate state, it's already quite fragile to begin with. I mean, just in its natural, unblemished state would be a harsh thing for it to have to endure. That's certainly the truth. But I've seen models where they basically figure that the entire everything which surrounds the Earth, both of these atmospheric conditions, would be completely ripped away. I mean, ripped away absolutely, without question.
Well, you know what the Van Allen belt is as well.
Yes.
That's a belt of radiation all around the planet. if you take away the ozone layer, how much effect do you think the Van Allen belt in itself would have on life on this planet?
Well, this is why, people described the use of nuclear weapons as burning the entire planet to a cinder. If it didn't do it in the initial explosions, it would certainly do it in the aftermath anyway.
Right.
We'd be completely exposed to all of this radiation, which we are currently, semi-protected from.
And you would have the first result of that would be, because people would die slowly due to radiation poisoning. They can hide in their houses. They can hide in caves. You can stay away from a lot of this radiation at least part of each day. But what you wouldn't be able to do is protect the plants that you require to eat. And what you would have is massive starvation. Now let's delve into a little bit deeper the destructive capability of these mechanisms. First off, nuclear war has no winner. But in 2006, several of the world's leading climatologists published a series of studies that evaluated the long-term environmental consequences of what we're discussing, nuclear war, including baseline scenarios fraught with merely 1% of the explosive power, as I stated, of the U.S. and or the Russian launch-ready nuclear arsenals. And they concluded unequivocally that the consequences of even a small 1% nuclear war could include catastrophic disruptions of the global climate and massive destruction to the Earth's protection via the ozone layer. These and more recent studies predicted that global agriculture would be so negatively affected by such war, a global famine would result that would cause at least 2 billion people to starve to death in immediacy. That's not to say what the long-term ramifications are. Now, we're talking about utilizing 1%. There are thousands upon thousands of nuclear warheads at the ready. There are thousands available on U.S. submarines alone. Hundreds of missiles, each carrying multiple warheads, and that's something I can't discuss exactly how many. But let me put it to you that there are thousands. Now, you know the Russians have at least as many. You know the Chinese probably have close to as many. So we're talking about what could easily be tens of thousands of warheads. Now, 1% has enough to throw the entire world into a unresolvable catastrophe that could easily culminate in the total negation of any higher form of life on this planet. That's 1%. So here's my question in all this. If 1% can do this, and we know that we have 100% or 99 times that in reserve, why are we still building more?
Right, because, let's just quantify this a little bit. I believe I read some of these studies as well. And if I remember correctly...
Yeah, this article actually lists them all. It's got a really, really good section where it lists all of the studies the info came from. But go ahead, please.
Oh, excellent. But one of those studies, and it was concurred upon by various peer-reviewed individuals. There was a lot of peer review to it.
Yep.
And they completely agreed with every single point. They gave it, their absolute, basically, stamp of approval that you could under any peer review circumstance. I mean, it was like, this is scientific fact. That 1% that they were talking about is enough to cover every square inch on this planet at least 3 times, mathematically speaking. Okay? Now, that's just a blast. We're not talking about the fallout, the resulting radiation. I don't even think there would be a need to consider starvation afterwards, because if 1% were unleashed, there would be enough to create, and this term was used a lot, mass extinction event, of the, on the scale that would be absolutely global. There would be, and what does that mean? That means that nothing survives. Nothing.
Well, what you're talking about, one of the things you're talking about, is releasing enough soot and ash into the upper atmosphere to block out a vast majority of the sunlight. This is where the term nuclear winter came from.
Right.
And when you block out the sunlight, then what you do is you immediately start the extinction process on just about everything that is green and grows. What you immediately do is you start the mass extinction of planktons in the oceans, which require sunlight. Once you've done that, most people don't understand. Yes, green plants supply a lot of oxygen to this planet. But the biggest supplier of oxygen on this planet are microorganisms in the ocean. And if you block out the sunlight or you take away the ozone layer, what you do is you kill them off.
Right.
What you do is you kill off the green plants and you kill off the microorganisms that produce all of the oxygen we need to breathe. And probably, if starvation don't get you, suffocation will. Eventually. It's a no-win situation. It is inevitable mass extinction.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like you said before, even in the scenario where, let's just say, there are these collections of people that think they can hide somewhere on this planet, there is literally no place on the planet to hide. Because...
Under Denver.
You can't, though. That's
under
no
Denver
good.
Airport.
I know, but it doesn't work.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Yes. I agree.
And basically, I mean, unless we're all going to get up and move to another rock out there in the Milky Way, I don't think there's any other way to deal with this. If this happens. And the thing that always frightened me about it is it wouldn't even have to be the intentional foolishness of military men basically sitting there and, thumping their chests, thinking that they can move this great chessboard around and win. The concept of winning a nuclear war, it has not gone away, as you were stating. How is it, I don't even get why it is that these individuals who are still engaged in this, people that are, seeming to be real human beings, have any sort of concept that you can win. I don't understand how they don't see, it's not as though we can really put an entire dome over a place and wait it out. It doesn't work that way.
Well, it's called nuclear primacy. Even more frightening is the fact that the neocons running U.S. foreign policy believe that the U.S. has nuclear primacy over Russia. And that is, the U.S. could successfully launch a nuclear sneak attack against Russia or China, their nuclear forces, and completely destroy them. I'm telling you unequivocally, you can't do that. They're spread out way too far, and they all have their own power supplies. This theory was calculated way back in 2006. The Rise of U.S. Nuclear Primacy, which was published, I believe, in Foreign Affairs by the Council of Foreign Relations.
The CFR published it.
Where is there any surprise there? By concluding that Russians and Chinese would be unable to retaliate, or in some small part of their forces remained, would not risk a second attack by the United States by retaliating. I can tell you right now that this is based on so many faulty premises. If you were to take out Moscow, and I don't think if the United States was to do a preemptive strike, it would be to take out cities. It would be to take out power grids. It would be to take out strategic facilities that would allow a retaliation. But as I stated, these silos are scattered, just like they are all across the United States. Montana, Illinois, Idaho, all over the United States. Russia is huge. And these silos are scattered everywhere, and they all have the ability to generate their own power. Do you think, for 1 second, that if they saw nuclear warheads, even if it's a small strategic strike, falling on Russia, they're not going to launch?
Well, no, of course not. And even if you could successfully, let's just say, let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they could, under their insane kind of ideal here, actually contain the Russian Federation.
Which we do have an anti-missile shield, but even that, they tell you themselves, is not 100%.
Well, right. But here's the other problem, is that, there are all of these surrogate satellites, which we are not necessarily 100% aware of. And anybody who tries to draw out any of these scenarios or to give you any, to depict what would occur during an exchange like this will tell you that there are unknown scenario pieces here. And one of them certainly is these satellite nations which act on behalf and have sort of separated, almost like embassies where, it's the Russian ground, but it exists, let's just say, in Germany or somewhere else. I'm not saying Germany has Russian missile sites, but the potential for these sites to be in all sorts of places that we don't even know about, haven't calculated, have not planned for, or anything else, even if the entire Russian Federation is crippled in that first blow, it does not preclude us from receiving retaliatory strikes from all places on the globe, just about. So I really have never understood where this is strategically even feasible.
Stop and think, okay? And without giving away anything, because this is something that even today there are certain things I can and can't talk about. But let's just name off a few, okay? Mm-hmm. We know there are nuclear weapons in Great Britain. We know there are nuclear weapons in Israel. We know there are nuclear weapons in Pakistan. We know there are nuclear weapons in India. We know they're in China. We know they're in Japan. We know they're in Russia. Need I keep going? What we have here is a system that is so tied together, and you explained it very eloquently. If Russia or China was at a point, and you must also know that there's nuclear weapons in both North and South Korea. So what we have is a situation here. If Russia was at the point where she could not defend herself and sent out a call to any of her cohorts, what would be any guarantee that they would not launch? And missiles could be lobbed from just about every point on this globe.
Right. I mean, not to mention the, all of the, not to get into anything deeply here, but I mean, there are plenty of submarines that are armed with these things.
Yes.
There are plenty of other seafaring vessels which are armed with these things. You can launch missiles from destroyers, all sorts of vessels. At any given moment, there are bombers in the sky that have live weapons.
Those are dinosaurs. They're not going to last too long if war breaks out, because they are the easiest target to hit.
Well, right. I'm saying in an initial sort of surprise first strike kind of scenario, you have no way of accounting for what will happen to them. Because if communication breaks down and they have no way to report or anything else, they have procedures that they're supposed to follow. And guess what?
That's it. If you're told to go and you lose communication and you've never been given a resend order, you continue.
Right. Right, and that means that any of these nuclear payloads that are in motion 24 hours a day, let's be honest.
Same thing with submarines. You're right again. But, on a submarine, and I know this to be a fact, I lived aboard these things for many years, if you are told to proceed to a specific area and launch, and you never receive a stand-down order, then you must launch. So if communication goes out, even if you had a president or a premier who was willing to say, okay, let's stop this madness, how much of it would be unstoppable?
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is that, the concept of fail-safe is nonsense. Because there are all sorts of, like I said, radical variables here that could occur. So once that order is given, and once somebody launches an attack, I mean, let's be honest, once you light one fire, you have no idea exactly how far that's going to spread, or what other fires will be cast off from those embers. Okay? This is just simple scientific fact, and I'm being very general about this, I know, but it's a reality.
Well, this is a reality. I wanted to discuss this today, simply, Because we discussed the political tyranny. We discussed the perpetual conventional warfare. We discussed the chemtrailing and the GMOs and the vaccines and big pharma. And we discussed all of these mechanisms that are in play to basically to cull the herd. But the one thing we don't discuss is the preeminent threat that not only still exists, but there's still idiots out there who feel that they can use it in a controllable fashion. And there are scientists. Now, let's talk about peer-reviewed studies. Nothing on this planet has been peer-reviewed more than nuclear war. Because from the late 1940s all the way through to today, modern day, that threat has existed, and there are so many brilliant people across this planet who are aware that that's lights out for this entire race.
Right.
And so the peer-reviewed studies that are available on this are voluminous, and they are phenomenally researched, and they are picture perfect. So, but nobody talks about this topic, but yet we have idiots who sit in the seats of power, global power, who honestly believe that this is a toy they can play with and the repercussions will not be fatal. They're wrong.
They're absolutely wrong. I mean, all you have to do is, I mean, just publicly, you could look at the completion, look at the completion of the Manhattan Project. They started think tanks with this specific purpose, to figure out exactly which scenario was winnable, which was not. I'm sure it was started before that. I'm sure that, but once the completion of the entire Manhattan Project was, public knowledge, so to speak, we started to see a proliferation of these individuals trying to draw out scenarios in which this great new weapon could be utilized in order to win a war. And let's be honest, nobody who has ever studied this or taken it to its logical conclusion has ever determined that there is a way to make it survivable on a large scale.
No, it isn't.
Terms like Megadeth, which, I know some people know the band and all that good stuff, but the reason why the term Megadeth came into being was because they were speaking in those terms about these scenarios. It meant the death of 1 million. Okay, so, and here we're talking about small bombs. We're talking about dinosaur-type technology compared to the multiple ballistic warheads that are out there now, to the much more efficient things that are dropped and, detonated in atmospheric ways and everything else. This stuff has only gotten more proficient as a machine of death. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It has been one of those things that has always stuck with me, since I was a child, is this concept. And I didn't even live through the days, because I know I've heard people, and you'll probably laugh at this, Roger, but, I look back at these old sort of, the government propaganda films about the duck and cover and all this other nonsense.
Oh, God, yes. Okay. I lived through that.
Yeah, well, you did, but I didn't, but I was afraid. Okay, I was afraid because I saw, during the time I was a child, those films started to become public. We started to see what these small scale weapons could do on a test range even. We started to see things like this. And it just, I took it to its logical conclusion and said to myself, now, if we take this and we drop 1,000 of them as opposed to 1, what happens? And
well, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
What most people aren't aware of, okay, is say you drop a nuclear weapon on a city, or you do an air blast over the city, okay, which is a very low altitude air blast. This has the ability to ignite, because of all of the combustible material in that city, say the size of New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, has the ability to ignite a massive firestorm which could exceed 100 square miles. Okay? We're talking about something the size of a bread box that can ignite a firestorm 100 miles across, burning almost as hot as the sun.
Right, and as far as I understand, I mean, the core of that device could be no bigger than a baseball.
It's pretty small, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a nuclear scientist, but I'm just saying from the stuff that I've read and the films I've watched about this stuff, where they were researching it, it's just absolutely frightening. It's just like, the idea and the concept, a lot of people made these sort of statements in the past, and you can find it in newsreel footage about, it was like unleashing the power of the sun.
Absolutely. And I'm treading on Lucille's time here. So if you want to bring her in so I can at least say hello to her before we wrap up and I go away, because I really don't want to monopolize the discussion you're going to be having with her.
Oh, absolutely, Roger. But you know what? This is a topic, though, that I think is often ignored, and I think that it is not brought up enough, because it is a serious threat to everyone. This is not a matter of,
It's the most immediate method of eliminating life on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't see anything but poison and destruction in its wake.
Hello.
This is the thing. Hello, Lucille.
How are you,
Hi.
Lucille?
Hello. You guys want to talk a little bit more? That's fine.
What do you think about nuclear weapons, Lucille?
Well, I don't think that they're too friendly.
The master of understatement. Basically what we've done, the article that I posted today, the one you edited for me, we've had the discussion on that article, and again, it's something, nuclear war, the option is still on the table. It's something that nobody seems to discuss anymore. They figure that this is, when the Cold War went away, any possibility of a nuclear exchange went away with it. And what we are seeing more and more, especially with the Obama administration and the amount of money he's poured into modernizing the U.S. nuclear arsenal, is that there are still people out there who believe that strategic strikes with nuclear weapons are possible. And what we've been doing is going over the data showing that even if 1% of either the American or the Russian arsenal was unleashed, it would cause irreversible damage to the entire planet and to humanity itself.
Absolutely. Even with just Fukushima.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Pretty grim, huh?
Yes.
So we have to do what we can to avoid it.
Yep. All right. Charles, is there anything else you'd like me to chime in on? If not, I'm going to bow out and allow you and Lucille to have a conversation.
Well, I really want to thank you for coming on today, Roger, because this is one of those things that I do like to try and bring up now and then, and I think that it is one of the more ignored sort of dangers in this world. And I say again, it is one of those things that has been a generational affair, though. We have watched, and like I said, I spent a lot of time on the JFK stuff, but if you listen to those tapes with the Joint Chiefs and everything else, these guys were actually insane enough to believe that if they, basically pulled a sneak attack, they could win strategically with these weapons. Yeah. And I have failed to understand that ever since I was a child. So I, again, fail to understand how it is that grown people don't see exactly what this is. There has never been one of these scenarios that's ever looked really great and positive, like we could win some sort of victory for our side, quote unquote, in any way, shape, or form.
Well, your presumption, which I feel is faulty, and no, I am not pushing back or saying anything negative about what you just said, but your assumption is faulty because it's based on the fact that these people are sane. They're obviously not.
I can't disagree with you one bit. There is no, but that's the thing, is I have trouble relating to it because as crazy as I can get, Roger, I can't be that insane.
All right, one of the things that we all know is that the elite do not intermarry. They don't take sheeple as husbands or wives. They keep within their own family and their own bloodlines, and their manifesto even states that they will not interbreed with us lowly human beings. Now, I would tell you that one of the repercussions of inbreeding is a general erosion of intellect over the generations. They've been at this for a couple 100 years. They're all morons.
Yes, sir. Again, I can't find a single place to argue with you, Roger. I wish I could, though. I really wish I could. Listen,
Lucille,
thank you again.
That's my swan song. Lucille, Charles, it's always great talking with both of you, and thank you so much for giving us a venue again, Charles.
Oh, never a problem, Roger. It's really a pleasure for me. And you take care of yourself, sir, and keep up the good work. I really love seeing all the stuff that comes out from you and from everybody else at the Liberty Beacon.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Lucille.
Okay. Have a good one.
Thank you again. I'm getting a little bit of kickback on the audio, Lucille.
I was wondering about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that from me or you?
Yeah, that's you.
What do I do?
If you move your microphone a little bit away from your speaker, or I don't know, maybe your headphones are really loud. I'm not sure which.
Well, I just have a speaker. I don't know. What do I do about this? Do I cut out I can't cut out the mic, right? Because then I wouldn't hear you.
No, you don't cut out the mic. You could try turning it down a little bit, maybe the speaker a little bit.
Oh. Is that from me? Yeah, that's you. How's that?
Let's see. Well, I'm not hearing myself as bad. So, anyway, Lucille, how are you tonight?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
All right. Again, you're the, explain your position again with the Liberty Beacon, please.
Well, I'm the executive director, and as such, I get articles up on the website and research articles, and the ones that the staff write themselves, I edit them, and I book people for the radio show, which is quite a lot of fun because I get to meet some incredible people who have really interesting stories to tell, and I just love having them on the radio because it puts them there more broadly, and their issues.
Right. So, did you want to discuss anything in particular? I know we were on the nuclear fear, the nuclear subject. Let's just say nuclear versus humanity and our survival. But I don't know if you wanted to kick the discussion into another direction, or if you wanted to continue on with this. Either way, it's fine with me.
Well, something Roger said at the very end there. Well, you said they intermarry with each other because they don't want anything to do with us sheeple, right? Inferior people. So that's interesting because I've been reading a lot about eugenics and how it's connected with psychiatry and Nazism. And it's pretty interesting that eugenics was actually started in the 1920s, the American Eugenics Society.
Right.
And they were supported by, you might know of this, but J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller and Carnegie, Margaret Sanger, who used her ex-husband's money to support eugenics. And also the Harriman Railroad fortune, which is part of the Bush family, and many other guys, but these are some major players in promoting eugenics.
Lucille, do you have the player on for UCY still? Is that what that is?
Maybe I do. Hold on a second.
Yeah, because I'm hearing it delay a bit, and I'm thinking to myself, it must be my broadcast coming back at me.
Let me see if I can get rid of this. Yep, you're right.
There we go.
Okay.
Now you're nice and clear. Okay, great. Eugenics is an excellent topic, and a lot of people don't realize because they do trace it back to the to the Nazi regime and and to Germany at that time. But realistically, a lot of that was actually inspired by a couple of things, and one of the major supporting factors there was the American Eugenics Society, and of course names like Sanger and and Morgan and Mellon, I think, even come up there. Carnegie, the Carnegie Foundation comes up in there in support of that. Now, what is also fascinating is certain elements of the American Eugenics Society later went into Planned Parenthood as well.
Yes.
Also very fascinating. But, you know, the playbook, so to speak, for the ideals that were being, you know, implemented, let's just say, during that time, during World War II, during you know, Adolf Hitler's regime, so to speak, were actually very much inspired by American ideals that were passed along from people here in this country. Yes. And you know, if you have anything that you want to talk about on that subject, I'm always, you know, glad to learn more and more about that agenda, because I think that's got a lot to do with what it is we're looking at today.
Oh, very much so. It actually started in California. I don't know if you're aware of that. They were very big on eugenics and passed actual laws that certain people would be made sterile, and the inferior people who weren't very Nordic. And so there were thousands of people who were sterilized. I think it was 100,000 or 200,000, something like that.
Yeah, the numbers are hard to calculate, because a lot of people actually were sterilized based on standardized testing, which was supposed to evaluate their IQs and things like this. So if you were seen to be like intellectually inferior, you were mandatorily sterilized by law. In this country, by the way, we're not talking about during Hitler's regime. This was in the United States of America.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were actually 300,000 people who were sterilized and 100,000 killed in Germany alone. Now, you know, Hitler got his cue from America, and he was part of Mein Kampf, his book, where he praised Americans for their eugenics. And that's what got him started. So it's pretty grim what's happening, and it has a lot to do with what's going on today, because, I mean, psychiatry is very much a part of that. They pushed eugenics during the war, and they were behind the whole all the killings.
Mm.
Yeah, in Germany.
And you know, let us never forget this, okay? The concept, and I want to stress this to people, because I think they miss this a lot. The concept of genetics and something being a genetic predisposition and all this kind of stuff, where, you know, certain things cannot be helped because of your genetic structure. This sort of idea, without taking into account what they call an epigenetic response, which is the stimuli which interacts with someone's genetic code, also contributes to the development of a human being. In other words, people that may be born with the genetic predisposition for something, if it is not stimulated by the person's environment, by the person's interactions, by the chemicals that they take in, by the food they eat, etc., etc., if it is not stimulated, the sort of negative part of their code, so to speak, it doesn't necessarily manifest itself. And this is something that almost marks certain modern geneticists in a way. You can sort of see who the bad guys are right away by the people that believe that there are absolute genetic answers for things. You know what I mean?
Yes, but there is no proof, as I mentioned last week. The psychiatry has no definition of mental illness. They say it's physical, but they have no proof. There's no tests that prove anything. It's all a big lie. It's all meant to sell drugs. And they're naming more and more illnesses and disorders that mean nothing. They're just ridiculous. So, and that's the whole point behind it.
Well, right, yeah. And a lot of the people that wrote the very early PDRs in this country, having to do with psychiatry, were exactly these type of people that believed in sort of the cult of eugenics. You know, there is an occult aspect that got mixed into it, because the American eugenics ideal was sort of a purely scientific, in a way, concept, but there was an occult ideal which was mixed in there as well. that caused these, these sort of odd belief structures to rise up where, the Aryan people were legendary people and et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And they utilized, various legends and things. I mean, there were pagan myths mixed in there, and I mean, Nordic pagan myths as well as, Celtic pagan myths, which were sort of coalesced together in conjunction with this genetic ideal, which, as I said, basically, if you had a particular set of genetics, you were therefore inferior, you were therefore lesser than the more pure sort of version of the species. But I say again, this is scientifically just ridiculous because of the absolute fact that there has to be an epigenetic interaction. Human beings are social creatures. Right. And part of what we are built on psychologically, emotionally, and physically has to do with the stimulus and the intake of other things in our environments. So our experiences, the food we eat, the water we drink, and every single thing that we do ingest in our lifetime in one way or another is part of that particular development, let's just say. And, a predisposition is not a predetermination. A lot of people fail to make that, to make that sort of, juxtaposition between the two terms in their own minds. And I think this is a problem because, like I say again, you can really sort of get a good idea about the type of scientific mind you're dealing with when you do discuss something like genetics. Because after all, someone who believes that, since you have a particular genetic code, you're therefore doomed to have something happen to you, in particular, is actually someone who is more along the lines of the people that, like you say, gave the founding ideals to the Nazi regime, gave the founding ideals to any of these sort of, genocidal, racial supremacy sort of, streams of thought.
Right.
But psychiatry, has been one of those very insidious and prolific sort of things that has gone on through the society, and has, as you said, absolutely is not even relatively scientifically based. They changed their physician desk references to reflect a lot of this stuff, beginning when we at the end of World War II, a lot, and it continues to this day, where they've been expanding the definitions of disease. Expanding, character traits into disorders, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what's happened. And if you look at it, it's invaded every area of life. It's not just the courts, which most people are familiar with, but it's the government, military, schools, hospitals. I know of someone who went to a hospital to have an operation. He had a heart condition. He had the operation. He was doing fine. He was go home the next day, and someone slipped him a psychiatric drug, and he almost died. So it's just becoming so insane, especially without your consent, which is becoming more and more prevalent. And
right, and this is flies right in the face of the sort of Patient's Bill of Rights that we were introduced to a few years back, where, any sort of medical treatment is not supposed to be something that you have to endure without your knowledge or without your permission. You have the right to refuse any sort of medical treatment that is not absolutely necessary to stabilizing your life functions, as far as I know. But here's the thing, like you say, there are plenty of situations where we find that they simply do whatever it is they want based on these sort of foul, faulty beliefs.
Well, to me, I think it's just all based on money. They're making billions of dollars, and they don't even care if they get sued. They'll pay that and just continue, just carry on. But there are many that are being taken down, which is the good part of it. There are a lot of psychiatric hospitals and psychiatrists who are being arrested, which is very good, because it takes that kind of exposure. I mentioned last week Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which has some incredible videos that people should go and see. They deal with the military drugging children, how they make their money, how they market themselves. These are incredible videos, which are exposés that are just amazing, and everyone should watch them.
The Citizens Commission. I'm sorry.
Commission on Human Rights. It's cchr.org. And I've published a few of their articles on Liberty Beacon. And it's just one aspect, one source that is doing tremendous good to expose psychiatry. Because, as I said, they're into everything. Now they're into the schools and the individual, and kids being taken away from their parents for no damn good reason. And
what is important here is to talk about the tainted sort of measures that sort of perfume the entire culture at this point from this again faulty belief system that you're talking about here. And you're right, it does get into the schools, it does get into the courts, and by extension the child protective agencies, so-called. All of these different agencies that are ostensibly in place to protect us are actually functioning under sort of a false paradigm of sorts. And this is absolutely one of the most dangerous things. I mean, and again, you don't have to go any further than the mainstream media to see it, because what are they talking about now constantly? Every time that there is any sort of a violent activity that news gets its little teeth into, as far as the CNNs, the HLNs, the MSNBCs, and the Fox Newses of the world go, immediately now, every time there is sort of an outbreak of violence in a small area, we are confronted again with the discussion of mental health issues. Do you have anything to say about that in particular? Because I know that's got to be part of your mind, your thoughts.
Well, yeah, most of the time, the issue of psychiatric drugs is not even brought up in the news. They just ignore that end of it, and that is the main reason. That is the main cause of these shootings. Almost every one of these shooters was on a psychiatric drug, and that's a fact. So, but the mainstream media will give you all kinds of other reasons, well, it's the guns, and let's take away guns. But it's psychiatric drugs, which makes people depressed and violent in a large number of cases. Especially young kids, were vulnerable, much more than adults.
Right. And, even their own packages tell you that it may increase homicidal or suicidal ideation.
What kind? Why would anyone take these things? I just don't understand. It's just insane. If people see that, if they read the warning signs, why would they take the drug? It's insane. I guess they're hypnotized by the media and by their doctors, and they're uneducated.
Well, this is another fallacy that needs to be tackled here, because the major problem that I see is quite often people don't question their doctors at all. It is a medical practice. It's called a medical practice. There's a reason for this. Okay? Their knowledge is not necessarily infallible. They're not gods, and they don't know the biology, the psychology, or the epigenetic episodes that are going to occur with any particular individual. So really, honestly, everything is sort of trial and error when it comes to chemical medicine at this point, or what they call allopathic medicine,
Right. It's all a joke, really. You can help someone just by having them take a walk and giving them some good organic food, That would go miles in helping a person feel better. Or just sit down and talk to someone. Have someone listen to what you have to say. That's real therapy. But they don't do that. I mean, psychiatrists, do they actually do any therapy, or they just prescribe a drug? Most of the time. Here, take this drug.
Yeah, a lot of them are described now as psychopharmacologists.
Yeah.
Which is a frightening term in and of itself.
Right. Where's the therapy in that term?
Well, Yeah, exactly. There is no therapeutic event. They call getting certain levels in your system therapeutic levels. But how do they know it's therapeutic until they try it? First of all, and plus, anybody that I've ever known that's been on one of these drugs, and even the people that actually swear by them and say that they've actually done them some good, there is always an instance where we have other things that were tried first that did not succeed, that caused what they call side effects, but I argue that is the effect desired in most cases. But I mean, all you have to do really, again, is look at their literature. And look, if you don't want to read, or if you can't read, I'll tell you what. Take a look at a commercial for one of these drugs. Every single one of these things is like, may cause terrors, crazy thoughts, psychosis, in rare cases may cause suicide, may cause death, heart palpitations, all these things. And this is what they admit to, mind you, and then meanwhile, it's usually much, much worse.
Right.
I mean, there was a rash of problems with people taking Ambien to try and sleep. Now you think to yourself, well, a sleeping pill should be a pretty straightforward thing, right?
Yeah.
But a sleeping pill for someone who is having trouble sleeping makes some sense, let's just say. Okay, but here's the problem. A lot of people wound up walking around like zombies, wound up, walking around in virtual blackouts or in sleepwalking conditions where they have no memory of their actions. They're not making good judgments of any kind. Some people did this very harmlessly, but others, more famously got behind the wheels of cars. I mean, there were guys in the Congress, in the Senate, who had been caught in Washington, D.C., having episodes on Ambien,
Yeah.
And, it amazes me, and meanwhile, it is probably one of the most prescribed drugs for sleep still.
Right.
Only a few weeks ago, my wife is in the hospital, and trying to get looked at because she's pregnant, and they wanted to prescribe her Ambien.
Oh my God.
Because she was having trouble sleeping because she was uncomfortable. Now, the Ambien. This made me shake my head immediately, because to me it's one of the more dangerous things that you could possibly give, any person, not even thinking about what the damage may be to the baby, but,
Yeah, of course.
But even so, I'm thinking to myself, well, gee, now I may have a sleepwalker on my hands. And this is documented. I'm not saying this because I'm crazy or because I'm making things up. You can find, I'm sure if you just, enter into a search engine the word Ambien and sleepwalking, you'll find plenty of recorded incidents where this happened. And I think they actually had to add it to the label a couple of years ago. But Ambien, I know for sure, has been around since, like 2000? At least?
Yeah. And there's such simple cures for insomnia. You could drink warm milk, or you could take melatonin, which is a natural supplement. There's a bunch of things you can do that are natural that will help you sleep. You can take a walk around the block, and that relaxes the body to be able to go to sleep. Even taking B1. I know I take B1 sometimes when I can't sleep, and that puts me out in 10 minutes. So, there's just natural things that people can do to feel better. Like I said, just eating good food. Because, people eat such garbage that alone makes people depressed and overweight and all the other symptoms. So even if they just got off the bad food, they would feel a lot better.
Oh, absolutely.
Most psychiatrists are just, I think doctors have maybe 10 hours of study on nutrition in medical school. That's about it. They don't relate the diet or exercise or true mental health, real mental health, with life,
Right, and this gave rise to the profession of the professional nutritionist, and now you have those in hospitals and doctors' offices everywhere. But I'll tell you what's funny about those people is that they have plenty of, sort of the old school textbook ideals about what nutrition is.
Right.
But they never take into account, the artificial flavorings, the artificial preservatives, the artificial food, let's just face it at this point, that people are ingesting. They never take that into account.
Right. Even corn, I was reading corn, has been injected with a chemical to make people sterile. That's,
right.
Yeah, it's all very insidious. What is happening with food, So, it comes from all different areas. But I'm specifically interested in psychiatric drugs and psychiatrists because they do a lot of damage. And that's most of them. That's their intent. And the ones that go into it with well-meaning, they just quickly fall into the trap, of giving people drugs because they just don't know any better. They weren't trained in anything else. And then that's what happens. There's a lot of doctors who try to do other things, and they get kicked out of the AMA and banned. There was that Dr. Simoncini. Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not, but please tell me.
He's an Italian oncologist, and he figured out that injected baking soda cures cancer. It actually shrinks the tumors in a few days. And
right.
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with his name, but I knew the story. Yeah, the baking soda. Please go on, though.
Yeah, so he was totally banned from the AMA and bad mouth and called a liar all over the internet. But I believe him. I believe, something that costs 79 cents is going to cure cancer. They don't want that.
No, that's for sure, and I got to tell you that I've always been dismayed by the sort of attacks on guys like Andrew Wakefield and things like that, because even though his studies were confirmed by other people and everything else, he's still been sort of discredited. A lot of times when these guys step out of line and don't utilize the big pharma dollar and don't utilize the big pharma flow of chemicals, they wind up getting punished for it.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Because that's the name of the game. And hopefully a lot of them will leave that profession, just wise up.
Well, we can hope so, because again, like you said, some of them do go in there with a legitimate desire to help people, with a legitimate desire to heal people, or to make their lives better in some way or other. But, it just occurs to me all the time, the very opening part of that Hippocratic Oath that says, I will do no harm. How many of them realistically believe, do you think, that they're doing no harm with this proliferation of these pharmaceuticals?
I don't know. I'd sure like to do a study on that and interview a lot of psychiatrists and see what they have to say or how much they are just ignoring it, and looking the other way. Because they would have to give up everything. Their whole training and their profession and their money, and I don't know how many of them are willing to do that. For a sense of ethics, because it really comes down to ethics, how ethical is it to give people drugs that you might know or suspect is destroying them?
Yeah, and it is an ethical concern for the practitioner of all sorts. Like I said, psychiatrist, psychologist, psychopharmacologist, whatever it is that they call themselves. And in some places, like in the state of New Jersey, all you have to do is have a master's degree in social work, and you can perform psychotherapy on people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's
not only that, but I wanted to mention. It's become a practice now where teachers and principals and social workers in schools can prescribe a psychiatric drug to a child. Did you know that?
See, I've heard about that, but I've been curious because I always thought you had to have one of those DEA approved, prescription pads to be able to actually write a prescription.
Maybe they have them. Who knows? But,
well, it seems to me as though their consults for these kids are being handed off to these psychopharmacologists who sort of mill people through. I mean, this is the way it was done a few years back. They may have improved the system since, But I do know that what they used to do is take one of these psychopharmacologists who would spend about 10 minutes with a client to sort of make sure that the data they received from the other people, like the principals and the teachers and things, was correct by asking a few key questions. Again, all of this subjective, to assure that they should put the teenage boy on Effexor or Prozac or whatever else.
Yeah, that's right. I should correct myself. That's probably how it happens. They don't actually prescribe the drug, but they suggest it based on their data.
Right. So based on these reports, they hand them over to somebody else who looks at them for 10 or 15 minutes, and then, maybe they see them again in a month or something like that, unless something very serious is reported again afterwards. And usually, even if serious incidents, continue, like let's just say you have a kid who's getting himself into fights all the time and they decide to medicate him to calm him down, it takes a few weeks to achieve that therapeutic level I was talking about. And so at first they say, well, the drug's not working yet, it needs to have time. And then after that amount of time has passed, the new excuse then becomes that the correct level may not be in the person's system and everything else. These are not absolutes, and I think the real problem for a lot of people is that appeal to authority, that need to seek out the approval from the so-called authority. And, I don't know about you, but growing up, we were sort of taught that doctors were authority figures in a way when it came to your health.
I grew up being very, respectful of doctors.
Right, but the fact here is that, and let's not forget this too, just because someone is an exemplary, wonderful scientist, there's also a bottom end to those classes too. So, there are guys that just barely made it through. And look, whenever you look at people that do their memorization and do their indoctrination at any educational facility, there's plenty of people that sort of temporarily remember what they need to pass their tests. And 8 years over the 8-year time period that most of them are supposed to be in school to get these MDs and so on and so forth, a lot of information can be lost. So even if, let's just say, for instance, the information to begin with were perfect, which it is not, but if that information were perfect to begin with, the retention level of that information when it comes to doctors is questionable. There are good doctors, there are bad doctors. There are good, garbage men, there are bad ones. It's just a matter of, someone's personal ability to interact with people and to understand people and to be able to make a proper guess, I guess, when it comes to these types of things. And I'm, meanwhile, cutting out a lot of bad things here. The drugs themselves are pretty poisonous to begin with, but let's just say that they weren't. Let's just say that these guys weren't being given incentives to push particular companies' crap, which is another whole phenomenon that has gone on in the medical profession. And you don't have to look too far. When you go into a doctor's office, they're using pens and pads and, even laptops that are provided to them by drug companies. Many times in a week, if you go to a doctor's office and you were there every day, you'd find drug company representatives that come in and buy them all lunch. And the nurses, the people answering the phones, the doctors, everybody. So guess what? The poison and drugging of our people is actually a lucrative business.
That's all it is, really. Even Obamacare, there's a provision for putting a psychiatrist in every school. So, they're going to be screwed really bad just by that.
I wasn't aware of that provision.
Yeah, I'd have to find it. I don't know the exact reference, but I've read it. But that's part of Obamacare.
Every time I hear something new about Obamacare, the 10-foot tall stack of paper that it is, I'm honest all the time and tell you that I don't fully understand the thing at all.
Well, who would?
And I think that's the point, is that, if we confuse them enough, we can sort of make it up as we go along. And, if it doesn't exist in that 10-foot stack, paper there, we'll write it later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it's just me.
No, it's not just you. I wouldn't even attempt to try and read it, But, are you going to be doing Obamacare?
Oh, no.
No.
I can't.
I'm wondering. Yeah, it's such a joke. I mean, are people going to be punished for not doing Obamacare? I don't know much about it.
Yeah, it looks like I'm going to have to pay the penalty when it comes up next year.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the Affordable Care Act is not affordable to me.
No, it's not affordable to anyone. I have some friends who had to move out of their house because their insurance would have been $600 more a month with Obamacare. So that's just one example.
Oh yeah, there's actually there was a lady on my last Thursday show. Her name is Michelle, and I'm going to have her on again this Thursday to discuss vaccines and medical, the medical industry as a whole and what she's had to endure regarding this. And she told me a story that basically, she has a special needs son which she's trying to heal and to take care of, and he requires a lot of medical assistance. I mean, breathing treatments and things like this are required. And her beliefs and everything, I'm not going to step all over them because I'm going to let her speak her piece on Thursday. But, the bottom line there, though, is that she told a quick story on my show where her premiums had tripled. Her monthly payment had tripled. And effectively, because of all of the contradictions and things and the amount of stuff that her son is in need of, she A, can't afford to go purchase it herself, but B, even under Obamacare, under the Affordable Care Act, most of this stuff is not covered somehow. And we're talking about a kid being able to breathe, things like this. And we're going to get into that a lot heavier, but I'm just telling you that every time I turn around, all I'm hearing is stories like this.
Mm-hmm. We're going to have a young woman on, her name is Tina Rochon, whose son was autistic. He was 25 years old, and I looked at pictures of him, and it just broke my heart, because he's just a beautiful, sweet guy, and he was given psychiatric drugs, and he died of a heart attack.
Mm.
So, these are atrocities that are going on. And yet people, can go to jail for life for speaking out against the government, saying something negative, or smoking a joint of pot,
Yeah, but meanwhile, if you under the guise of what they call, acceptable losses or cost-benefit analysis, allow something to go out into the population that, if we medicate 10,000, perhaps 100 people will die for every 10,000.
Yeah,
no problem. Based on our studies, if 100 people die out of 10,000, this is what we call an acceptable loss, or an acceptable ratio in the cost-benefit analysis, charts and things like this. And it's wholly evil to think that people build into it the concept of, this amount of people will die, but that's acceptable.
Yeah, I know. It's just outrageous. But, as I said, the bottom line is extremely unethical behavior, which these guys are getting away with. And if we put up with it, that's the worst thing that can happen, because we have to handle it. We have to expose them to what they're doing and take them to justice. And I believe they can be.
Well, I certainly hope so, because I'll tell you what, the biggest thing here again is to get people away from that appeal to authority. A doctor is only a man or a woman. Or if you're on Facebook, there's 32 choices as to gender, but, generally speaking, doctors are normally a man or a woman. And that's all they are. And, their medical practices are not infallible. And people need to first begin to think for themselves and to begin to examine things, and also remember to keep a good watch on anything you put into your body, whether it be your food or drugs, if you do require some drugs for some conditions, or whatever. I don't think that allopathic medicine is entirely is entirely wrong. But in most cases, natural remedies can be found. And this is something that, people need to explore for themselves because everybody's circumstances are different. No two people are alike, and no two people are seeking the same remedies to whatever conditions they may find themselves in. And that's speaking about all things. So, of course, when it comes to medicine and food and things like this, you have to sort of adjust for your circumstances as well.
Yeah. But, I'll tell you, it's amazing to me how some very intelligent people that I know didn't know what Monsanto was. And I was just shocked. Because to me it's so obvious, it's so widespread what they're doing. But I guess we do live in a very small community of aware people, and that's what concerns me, because the group has to get bigger and wider so that more people know what's happening.
Right.
Because, and
right.
They would prefer to go out and buy a McDonald's, which is going to kill them. So that's basically, it all comes down to that, isn't it? It's just the awareness.
Right, and that's why you're involved with the Liberty Beacon, and that again you can find at their main website at www.thelibertybeacon.com. Am I right? All one word?
That's right.
Plus, you can also find the Liberty Beacon on your social networking sites. I know there's a Facebook page which handles a lot of the links to the articles, gives you a lot of little quick sort of digests of articles sometimes in graphic form. I say again, I suggest The Falling Darkness, which is all one word also at thefallingdarkness.com.
Yeah.
It's a little more intense, a little more attitude ridden, let's just say, but I definitely appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I like reading those stories because it's truth. It's the way it is.
Is there any big articles that passed you recently while you were vetting articles? Let's just say for the website that you think people should really go and seek on the Liberty Beacon site, like just recent stuff. I mean, I know all the stuff on there is great, but I mean just recent highlights, sort of.
Well, let's see. I don't know of any in particular. There's just tons of articles that are really great. There's a lot of health things. There's always health things on Monsanto and vaccines and things like that.
Oh, sure, a wide array of stuff. I got to say that I've seen everything on there from vaccines and Monsanto to chemtrails to the dollar, the debt, Obamacare. We just did a discussion on nuclear weapons. There's been discussions about Fukushima on there. There's been discussions about the BLM, the land grabs, guns. You name it, pretty much anything that is liberty-minded, anything where, basically those that are in control here are being called out, you can find on the Liberty Beacon in one way or another, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was one particularly interested me on clean energy, which ruined Spain. I don't know if you've seen that one. Now Obama is dragging the U.S. over the same green precipice. That's what it's called. About, the farce of, green energy. Should read that one.
Yeah, that's one of those areas. That's one of those areas that I'm not really greatly versed in, but I should be, to be honest with you, because it is part of the equation as well.
Yeah. Well, we need to save this planet. I believe it can be, but it's going to take a lot of people doing the right thing. Like I said last week, there's a lot of things to fight. We need to be alert to what's going on, but we also need to create a new civilization. And I totally believe that that's the only way out.
Right, and a rise in
reading, I just wanted to say one thing.
Oh, sure.
If 10% of the world actually believe that we can be free, and created it in their minds, then it would happen. That's all it would take, is 10%. and everyone else would be influenced by that. So that's why it's important to not only be alert, but to put that there, to create it in your mind, to see the world the way we want to see it, without crime and insanity and war and all of that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, right, because we've suffered with the consequence of groupthink when it comes to people pretty much just following the other cattle over the edge.
That's exactly, you're right, you're totally right, it is groupthink. And you need to break away from that and just say, no, I don't want this. And I'm going to create a world the way I want it.
Right, and the thing is...
I've fallen victim of that sometimes because I'm a painter, mm-hmm. And sometimes I think, oh God, this world is so messed up. Maybe it's not worth being an artist. But then I realize, no, that is total nonsense. Because creation is all there is, really. In whatever form people need to create. It can be done.
Absolutely. You know what? That's a good point too. About your artwork and everything, just on a personal level. I mean, I know I love talking about, all of these different topics, and I urge people again to check out thelibertybeacon.com. But but you're also an artist.
Yeah, I'm an artist, and I'm finishing up a children's book that I wrote and illustrated. So I'm deciding to get that happening, and it makes me happy. But it also helps you to deal with the negative side of life. If you put the positive there, you put your own goals and purposes, because I'm sure we're all not we don't just have the goal of fighting the nasty guys, right?
Right.
That's not the end goal in life, although it's part of it. But whatever our goals and purposes are, we need to follow through and believe that they can happen. And that's what I would say to everyone.
Absolutely, but is there anywhere on the net where people can see some of your work, or can see the beginning of this book? I know you're working on getting it published, but is there anywhere you can direct anybody to for that as well?
Oh, sure. Thank you very much. There's Fine Art America. It's called fineartamerica.com, and you just put my name in, Lucille Femine, and I have all the most of the illustrations I did for the book on that page.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and a lot of other artwork I've done over the years. So anyway, this is very important to people, to do what they want to do. And just don't go affect. Do you know what I'm saying? Don't go affect of what's happening. You can deal with it, you can confront it, but don't go affect of it. Don't worry and be upset all the time over what's happening.
No, I know that's another thing too, is that and this is why I wanted to just bring up the fact that you're an artist and everything, because
mm-hmm.
I wanted to get people to understand that creativity and things like that are also very, very important. I actually have a caller joining me right now. Michelle, are you there?
Yes, I sure am.
How you doing? We're down to the last couple of minutes tonight, Michelle, but I wanted to, because I did mention that we're going to talk on Thursday.
Awesome.
And we're going to be we discussed some of the pharmaceutical, let's just say the pharmaceutical industrial complex tonight, and psychiatry and, the drugging of kids and things like that. This is what we were discussing for a little bit, and that's why I brought you up. That's why I brought you up.
Damn.
Sorry about
NSA,
that.
I'm telling you, the NSA, they're always blocking me, man. At least that's what I blame it on. AT&T or NSA, take your pick. But, to briefly touch on it, it's insane, the amount of pharmaceutical drugs that we're pushing on our children these days. And I hate to hijack your show because I'm pretty good at that. But just to talk about recent events, there's mass shootings going on. And then this latest boy, we'll say, in California that brutally murdered all of these girls. And, of course, the first thing they always go to is mental illness and Asperger's. And then they start pointing towards the autism. Well, it was the autism. He's autistic. And they've said the same thing about other mass shooters. But what I find is interesting is not only are these individuals, quote unquote, diagnosed by the mainstream media as being as autistic, they were all on
That's right. Yeah.
Psychological drugs. They're all drugged. And I think, we really need to realize that when it says on the insert that may cause suicide, hello, why are we going to give people something for depression that's going to make them kill themselves?
See, this is exactly what I was saying about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It's insane. In my own life, I recently had a close family member dealing with postpartum, and she did what she was supposed to do. She was seeing a psychiatrist, she was seeing a psychologist, the whole nine. And you know what they did? They were pushing drugs on her, tons of drugs, more drugs, and she ended up killing herself. She did the right thing. She did what she was taught to do, and she killed herself because they put her on the wrong cocktail of drugs. Mm. What the hell's going on? We're following your rules. We're doing what we're told to do, and we're all getting bit in the ass. And I think that's, completely by the medical hierarchy.
And another thing they say is if a person goes off the drugs, they say, oh, well, he did that because he went off the drug, which is ridiculous. Oh, yeah. It's totally insane. And
what's even, we become addicted to them.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Risperdal, which is an antipsychotic drug that's often prescribed to individuals with autism. I hate to always bring that up, but that is what I'm pretty knowledgeable in. And if you notice now they have lawyers are trolling the TV that there's been physical damage, mental damage done by this drug. And here, the whole time, the entire community was saying, no shit. Of course there's damage being done. And so I've seen children with my own two eyes become completely zombified, regressed by Risperdal. And that's the first thing that people do, or doctors do. They're ready to push a drug. So.
That's right.
Well, Michelle, I gotta tell you, you're awesome, first of all. And you're saying everything that we were saying as well, except you said it a lot better and a lot faster. I love it. This is why it's going to be a great show on Thursday, because we're going to have you for 2 hours. And we're going to...
Oh, my goodness. Are y'all going to be able to handle it?
Well, I might not get too many words in on my show, but I think it'll be good for the listeners. So...
I apologize.
Let's get to it. Don't apologize. It's fine. You and Kim are both going to be on that show, so... I
look forward to it.
Go through a few things there. And I plan to learn a lot, by the way, people. So we are down to the last couple of minutes here. So I'm just going to say to both of you that I really appreciate you joining me, especially, Lucille. I really appreciate all of your work at the Liberty Beacon. And Michelle, you should check out the libertybeacon.com as well. Something with a little more attitude is the fallingdarkness.com. It's also associated to the Liberty Beacon, and there are tons of news stories that go right along with all the stuff that you've been talking about, just so you know. And of course, this is part of the new reality. This is part of it should be the new normal, but it's actually the new abnormal, because none of this is normal. None of this is right. And, before I go again, like I said, everybody stay tuned, because after me tonight will be the continual condition. Then I guess the Canary Chronicles will be on, and then Primer Time, and Prepper Chicks. So, in that order, everybody stay tuned to UCY.TV radio. And, Lucille, again, I thank you for all your time tonight, and I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
I can't say enough about the Liberty Beacon. I dedicate every Tuesday to it, so.
I know, it's great. It's awesome that you do that. I really appreciate it.
And, at some point we're going to have to discuss more of that Earthship solution deal, but, like I said, it's taking time, so we got to give it a little time to percolate before we have new developments there. But,
it's coming along nicely, though. The website looks great. Yeah.
Right, and I suggest everybody searches that out as well, because that's that community in Colorado. Michelle, like I said, we're going to do 2 hours, and we're going to talk about, vaccines, the drugs, children, rearing them, the problems, the proliferation of this entire, autistic state that is kind of been forced upon the population. And everybody, the revolution will not be televised. Thanks, and have a good night.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, pistols and fondle slab of choice, I don't know when that was, internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have threes, two sources.